Hello and a warm welcome to Open Pali Live here on Open Pali. My name is Lynette Manzini. Thank you very much for joining us. In today's conversation, we are focusing on the Auditor General's report, the 2023 Auditor General's reports. Millions have been reported missing, a lot of mismanagement issues, and reoccurring issues from 2022. What must happen now? In today's conversation, I'm joined by Honorable Hon Matewu. He is the Marondera Central Member of Parliament. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know you need to rush to Parliament, so we'll be quick. Honorable, first question. What was your first impression of the auditor's report?
My first impression was that basically these are issues that are always recurring in the Auditor General's report because I've been reading it for the past 7 years and the issues seem to be the same. And what I just want you to note is that when we say 2023 Auditor General's report, half of those reports are not actually 2023, but some could be from 2019, 2020, 2021, depending on when that entity submitted their accounts. So, but the Auditor General is mandated to release every, I think it's 181 days into the year, annually, a report to show the performance of government entities.
So which means there are some entities that are not producing their accounts on time. So some, as far as 2019, submitting it in 2023?
Yes. So basically, if you look, for example, at ZBC, ZBC's accounts are for 2019 and 2020. They haven't been audited for 2021, 2022, and 2023. So that is, what we have with most of these government entities.
And what disadvantage is that? What kind of a scenario does that bring up? Where in 2024, we're expecting a 2023 audit, but we're getting 2019 and 2020.
The disadvantage is that we don't know the financial health of that entity because we're looking at an audit that was done, financial statements from 2020, instead of looking for the year ending 31 December 2023.
Going further with the conversation, what is the depth of corruption and mismanagement, in government entities that has been, highlighted in this report?
Okay, so it's difficult to say corruption because corruption is when you have found that there has been the immaterial statements in the Auditor General's reports are true and there has been mismanagement or financial impropriety. That's when you say there's corruption. So as a member of parliament, I can't say there is corruption because we need to prove beyond reasonable doubt that there was corruption in any of these deals that took place. So part of our job as the Public Accounts Committee is to now call in all those, especially those who have a disclaimer of opinion. Remember, the Auditor General's job is to determine and give an opinion on the financial statements. And there are 4 opinions that the Auditor General can give. There's one which is called the modified, unmodified opinion or unqualified, which is a clean opinion to say there are no immaterial statements in these financial details or statements. Then there is the qualified one. The qualified one means there are in specific amounts, there is some mismatch or some immateriality that she has found, the Auditor General. Then that audit is called qualified. Then there is what is called an adverse opinion. An adverse opinion is where there are chunks and or more than half of that audit has immaterial statements. Then that's an adverse opinion. Then there's the disclaimer of opinion. The disclaimer of opinion is basically when the Auditor General could not even delve into those accounts because there's just not sufficient enough evidence to actually make an opinion. So that is the worst. So I'll give you an example. The worst performing, because the Auditor General produces 3 reports. She produces the appropriation accounts. The appropriation accounts, they are 96 appropriation accounts. 80. Appropriation accounts simply means the ministries and those funds that are given money directly from the government, from parliament, which is the Consolidated Revenue Fund. So people who are given money directly, that's That's what we call the appropriation accounts. Then there's the local authorities. We have 96 local authorities. They are all audited by the Auditor General. Then we have parastatals and other government entities and agencies. They are about 191. So just to give you a snapshot, of the 96 local authorities that were audited by the Auditor General, only 2 had clean opinions.
That's a big disaster.
So that's a disaster. So the disaster actually lies in local authorities. So there's only 2, just 2 only, which had clean opinions. Most of them had qualified to disclaim of opinion, which is like the worst. So this is the scope of what we're dealing with.
And how does that impact service delivery? Because I think that's what the citizens and the residents want to find out. If you have a local authority, you're expecting water, you're expecting sewer reticulation, you're expecting, a good city, but then that's not what's actually on the ground. How do you think that these, these observations by the Auditor General affect service delivery?
I think it's been outlined in the Auditor General's report. There's the sheer lack of service delivery in most of the councils, and people mistake to say because we live in Harare, we live in Marondera, they just focus on towns. But actually, most of the local authorities are the rural district councils, and there's a sheer lack of service delivery across the board. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Just to say, the only 2 clean audits were for Goromonzi Rural District Council and Marondera Rural District Council. Those were the only ones countrywide that had a clean opinion.
Even the capital city failed.
Yes, the capital city did not have a good opinion. So there we are.
It's very unfortunate. So in case you're just joining us, you are tuned into Open Pali live here on Open Pali. My name is Lynette Manzini, and joining me here in the studio is the Marondera Central Member of Parliament, Honorable Caston Matewu, and we are discussing the Auditor General's report that was tabled in Parliament a couple of days ago, and he's just talking to us about some of the issues that were raised there. Honorable, there's a financial black hole with millions of dollars unaccounted for. I want us to talk about. I was going through the report as well, and I realized there are certain sections you would read. The Auditor General would say, this monies were used, but they're unaccounted. How does this happen in a state, in government? And what role are you playing to ensure that, every cent is accounted for? I remember one of our reporters got in touch with the Public Accounts Committee chairperson, Honorable Wendy, and he said he's going to get to the bottom of it. Yes. How are you going to get to the bottom of it and ensure that every cent is accounted for?
Okay, so in cases where you've got where there are unsupporting documents, and this this quite happens a lot in these entities, that the Auditor General finds that there were no supporting documents for money that has been spent. And what we do as the public accounts is, for those with a disclaimer of opinion, mainly we call them to Parliament to explain to us, so that we can determine and make our own report in terms of the Constitution on what happened in that entity. So that's what we're currently doing at the moment. And I want to give you an example of that, which we haven't called yet. If you read the Auditor General's report, you had Lupane State University, where they could not submit supporting documents for fees paid by students. So you would have thought that the BESA or something has a receipt book, where people they write down and so forth, but they could not provide that, and they could also not provide a listing of students who wrote exams or whether or not they got billed for it. So this is one of the worst performing universities in terms of Auditor General's reports, and they had a disclaimer of opinion because the Auditor General could not satisfy herself on which opinion to give her, because there was just no evidence that was provided by the university. So this is where you get that they've spent so much money, but they can't account for the income or the expenditure. So these are the questions that we'll be asking them. And now, before you say, so what are we doing about it? The job of Parliament is to ensure that it is to make sure they're accountable. So the way we bring them to account is to do our report in inquiry, which we do, and then we produce a report and give it to the relevant authorities. We are not law enforcers. We are
Definitely.
legislators.
Mhm.
What we do is we make the laws and we bring them to account. Then the job of finding someone or arresting someone for corruption then rests with the police and Zach
Mm.
and Zach.
What has happened in the past with the reports that you have produced as legislators? Obviously, you went through this, you interviewed them, they came for
Yeah.
oral evidence, and then you compiled the report and forwarded it to the relevant authorities.
Yes.
Has there been any tangible results after your report has
Yes.
been
So in the
submitted?
previous parliament, we had an inquiry for Zinara,
Mhm.
and this ended up with some of the management in Zinara being arrested for various things which were in the report.
Mhm.
And the whole board was essentially dismissed. Both the board and the management were all dismissed.
Mhm.
So if you look at Zinara now, we have a new board chairperson, a new board, a new CEO, a new executive,
Mm.
because of the report that we had produced, which showed that there was considerable mismanagement of public resources. For example, um, they were giving each other $1,000 for hairdos
Mm.
a month.
Zinara road construction, but okay,
Yes,
they're
yes.
doing
And
the
they were giving management $4,000 to buy gym equipment at home,
Mm.
on top of actually paying their membership at elite gym clubs.
while we are living in a city with all these
Absolutely,
potholes.
absolutely, giving themselves bumper board fees. So all those things we exposed in our report, and
Mhm.
that led to the arrest of some of them, and the dismissal of all the management that was there at Sinara.
So, to our viewers, if you had any doubt about the Public Accounts Committee, this is what they can do. I had to ask this question because when I think when we interviewed the chairperson, Honorable Wendy, and posted it on Twitter, the responses that we got were, "What are they going to do? They're toothless bulldogs. They're not going to do anything." But here you're telling us that with your report,
Yes.
something actually happens. The
Yes.
board has changed. People were arrested, but then we never do recover these resources. How do we make sure that it doesn't happen in
Yes.
the first place? Because you said that you've been studying this for the past 15 years and
Yes.
they are recurring issues.
Yes. So, unfortunately, like I said, our role as MPs is not to bring people, is not to arrest people
Yes.
or to say there's an act of corruption.
Mhm.
But what I think, for example, let me start with local authorities. For local authorities, what I think must happen is that they should not be given devolution funds. Remember, 5% of the money that we appropriate goes to
Yes.
devolution.
Yes.
So all those who, and we have agreed this at Public Accounts Committee, and we're going to call in the Minister of Local Government, all those who have a disclaimer of opinion, an adverse opinion, and have not satisfied the Auditor General that they the missing funds or whatever, if they had not given any good management response, then those people must not receive
The devolution funds.
the devolution funds, and they must not have their budgets approved by the minister.
But doesn't that affect the residents
It
themselves?
does. So this is the catch-22 situation. And the other thing as well is that I'll be going more stricter. If you have an adverse opinion or a disclaimer of opinion, and just to let you know, there was 58 councils with an adverse opinion
Mm.
and 7 with a disclaimer. For those, I think the accounting officer must be accountable,
Definitely.
and the management. So if you start to dismiss people basing on the Auditor General's report, I tell you, you will have clean opinions
I
as
think
we go.
sanctions are important because if you don't have them, then people will keep doing it. They're like, okay, so
Yes.
the Auditor General highlights them, people make noise on social media, and then it dies down.
just
Then we
dies.
wait for another 183 days in the next year. And
Yes.
still looking at local authorities, there was one I was reading about, I think it's Chinoi, if I'm not mistaken, and they were talking about, and the auditor was talking about how there are about 2,000, over 2,000 businesses within that city, but they only had invoiced business licenses for about 200
Yeah.
200 companies.
Mhm.
Where are the other invoices? This is a similar case with the Lupani one you were referring to.
Yeah.
And coming back here to Harare, they don't have a list of businesses operating within the city. They don't have an
Yes.
updated system. what do you think is the way forward here?
So this draws down one to incompetence. So if you ask these councils, they will
Are you
tell
sure it's about incompetence, or there's a loophole that they've found over
it's
the years?
they could be a loophole,
Mhm.
or it could be. So you see, I don't want to make judgments
Yes.
on things that I've not delved into or
Mm.
have not called them. For example, we currently have Harare City Council an inquiry at the moment. I think
Yes.
they're actually appealing tomorrow morning.
Mhm.
They're appealing to Parliament to answer some of these questions in the Auditor General's report. And we're doing that inquiry and we will produce a report on our findings. But um, councils are very, they can tell you that we are short staffed. Ratepayers are not paying their money. So we can't employ more staff for us to be able to check or to police businesses. So we are hamstrung. That's what they'll tell you.
Mm.
But then again, some councils have the same number of staff and they're doing it. So I was saying sometimes it goes down to also competence. They're not competent enough, or the internal controls, the management is not doing their job. This is where I say, if we have such issues, then if you start to sack the directors, then you will start to see some change within these councils.
So, in case you're just joining us, you are tuned into Open Pali Live here on Open Pali. My name is Lynette Manzini. Joining me here in the studio is Honorable Caston Matewu, and he's just talking to us about the Auditor General's report. In today's discussion, we're discussing the millions missing in the 2023 Auditor General's report. What must happen now? What must change? Let us know in the comment section what you think. If you have questions, if you have comments, let's keep them rolling in the comment section. Honorable, there were a number of organizations, institutions.
Yes.
You talk of local authorities, you talk of, your ministries that contracted certain companies to get vehicles. I think we have over 54 million that was allocated to these various institutions, and they would maybe the contractor would get 8 weeks to supply these vehicles. A whole year later, those vehicles are not available.
Yeah.
Not one, not two. A lot of institutions have done this.
Yeah.
What do you think, in your own assessment, what is your own assessment about this issue? I know you haven't brought them into Parliament,
Okay.
but these are also reoccurring issues. Because
yes.
I remember I was reading a place where the Auditor General said some of these cars, they were supposed to be delivered in 2021,
Yes.
but by the time she did the 2022 Auditor report, they had not been delivered. 2023, they were not delivered.
Yes. So this is a recurring issue. And the excuse, and I want to tell you about the excuse that they give, is that government entities were paying in Zimbabwean dollars.
Mhm.
And because of the volatility of the exchange rate, which was changing time and again, by the time that the supplier wants to buy the car, let's say they buy the car from Japan
Mhm.
or from Singapore, let's say it was 60,000 US dollars per vehicle, and they paid it in Zimbabwean dollars. In the time they want to buy, the exchange rate has probably changed, and they can't now supply the number of vehicles that they were originally contracted to. This is the outstanding excuse
Mhm.
which I've seen from these suppliers for motor vehicles, saying no, the money that we're given is just not enough. But then our question would be, you knew that there is a fluctuating exchange rate.
Definitely.
What did your contract say?
Mm.
What did your contract say in terms of the exchange rate? What did your contract say in terms of the delivery time? And what did your contract say in the case that you fail to deliver your vehicle?
Mm.
Because some of these suppliers were given that money in Zim dollars, yes, but they produced nothing, and they did not remit back the money that they were appropriated or they were sent.
Mm.
So these are some of the questions that we will be asking the suppliers. The ministries and the government departments will just say, no, we did our job. We sent, our lawyers are working on it. It's before the courts, or it's before lawyers. But we will be saying, why did you not bring that money if you had given excuse that actually it is the exchange rate volatility. Yeah.
It's mind-boggling, I'm looking at sometimes when you want to buy something from the vendors, they'll actually say to you, if you have, back in the days before we had Zig, they would say, if you're using EcoCash, you use this amount. If you're using US, you use this amount.
Yes.
So your whole business, you went through PRAS, you're an established organization, and you know that there's this volatility, but you still ignore, get ready to collect cash and just sit and
Absolutely.
and forget about it. And I think one other concerning issue is we also heard that I think it's Solution Motors.
Yeah.
They even said they're not coming to Parliament because the organization has closed.
Yes. So basically, Solution Motors is one culprit, and I'll name them. They are one culprit, and they this has been going on for ages. They have been supplying, and I don't know why government departments and local authorities like Solution Motors. We want them blacklisted, but they closed. We in the last, if you read our last report in the public accounts for the last parliament, the ninth parliament, we actually said that these people should be blacklisted. Now they closed their company, but they're operating under a different name now. So we are going after the directors. Thankfully, we know who they are. So we're coming after them, and we are summoning them to parliament. We had asked them to come to parliament last week, and they all failed to come. So what we've done now is we've done our summons, and we are dragging them to parliament, kicking and screaming. And if they refuse to come still, then we are going to issue warrants of arrest in terms of the law.
They need to account because they cannot close their business. I mean, they are wealthy. If you go through the whole report, their name is mentioned a couple of times. I want us to go, I know we're running out of time, but I want us to look at the issue of assets. There's neglect, mismanagement of state-owned assets, poor maintenance of infrastructure, and discrepancies in asset registers. What came through your mind? I know it's not the first time you've seen this. An Auditor General asks for, instance, title deeds for land that a ministry owns or a department owns. They say they don't have them. They cannot prove that it's theirs. They don't even have an asset register.
Yes. So this is one of the most disappointing thing in government, and it happens across government where they don't have assets in asset register. And this is where, if you look in, I'll say, look in Harare, there are so many buildings owned by the council, but actually they are not in the council books. Someone is collecting rent there, and the council won't know it because these are legacy issues where the title deeds have been lost, the documentation is not there, but someone is collecting rent. Someone is running that building, but it's not in the council asset register. So this happens a lot in government. And I think we are going to have a separate inquiry just on assets to determine which assets. Of course, it needs manpower to be able to ascertain, to look at every single building and say, who owns this building? Who owns this building? So you realize that most of the buildings have no owners, but someone is coming to collect rent, and the councils or the ministries which own that building are not owning up to say it's ours. But someone within will be taking the money from them.
They literally know the title deeds are missing. They can manipulate this situation. It's a sad state of affairs.
It's a sad state of affairs. I would say this country needs to be closed, and then we start again.
Shut it down.
It needs to be closed, and then we start again
Okay.
and bring people to account.
And then just looking at, what improvements are needed in internal controls and oversights to prevent governance issues, especially in state enterprises.
So basically, like the Auditor General says, one of the main things is weak internal controls. By internal controls, we mean accountability. So the process by which, for example, you've got that laptop there, your monitor. The way that is
Thank you for saying a monitor. People think it's a laptop.
that monitor. The way that it's bought, the way that it's accounted for. So there are so many loopholes within those public enterprises in which a procurement is done, in which assets are moved from one place to another. So things can get lost in the way, and then people may take advantage of those things. So, for example, you say that you're going to in the parastatal, you'll be asked to go to the UK, for example, They buy you a ticket, they pay your hotel, they pay your hotel, or they give you money to pay your hotel. And then for some reason you fall sick and you don't go. But the ticket has been paid. You have already been given your allowances and everything, but you don't put it back because there's no way that they will check that if you have gone. You could just put up a report and say, I went and this is what happened. Those are weak internal controls. So a lot of money can actually be lost through very weak controls, which is rampant across government. Because people say, it's not our money. It's not a private company. This is the problem with in government. People say it's government. It's not our money. It's public money. Who cares? But if it was a private company, the owner would be coming to you and saying, listen, where is this penny? They would want every penny accounted for. But because it's government, people have a lecture attitude.
What then advice do you give to the electorate, to the citizens? Because people who are the custodians of this money are saying nobody cares, but people are walloping in poverty. Where there's a drought induced hunger, there's no water in the city. I live in the city, but for over 2 weeks we've had no water, and our councillor and the city council cannot even tell us what's going on.
Yes. It's sad, but then you see, citizens have a lot of things that they can do. Number one, citizens can write a petition to Parliament on a specific issue to ask Parliament to do a special inquiry, and this has been done. This happens a lot, but it doesn't happen on pertinent issues to do with where there is a site of corruption or mismanagement of public resources. I've not seen a petition to do with mismanagement of resources. People petition things to say, for example, last Monday I was attending, there was a petition, someone who wanted to change a clause in the Constitution. Yeah, to do with something to do with the High
Constitutional Court. Yes, I remember.
Yes, but no one would come up and say, listen, I think there's a lot of theft going on in, let's say, in the Ministry of Justice. Can we have an inquiry? Can we put a petition, maybe for the forensic audit to be done to ascertain where the money is being lost? Those are the things that citizens can do. Citizens can also demonstrate where your council, for example, has an adverse opinion, where the Auditor General could not be given any financial statements.
Honorable Matewu, you talk about demonstrating in this country.
Yes,
in this
but
country.
I'm saying things that citizens can do in terms of the Constitution. They can actually go to this to apply and say, we want to demonstrate against our council because of XYZ. And there will be demonstrations that will force the minister to act. Because if citizens just tweet and that it ends there, I can assure you nothing will be done. Nothing will be done. And you end up blaming people like me that we're not doing our job. But we are doing our job. We're exposing these people. We are bringing them to account, but we can't arrest them. But the citizens can take action. They can go and demonstrate to those local authorities that are underperforming to say they are wasting our money. They are taking our ratepayers' money, but they are siphoning it out somehow and not giving us the service delivery that the citizens deserve. So citizens have a lot of power in them, but they just don't exercise it.
So citizens, you hear this, the Honorable here is saying that you have a lot of power that you need to exercise. You can take it to the streets, you can take it to Parliament, do something. Don't just sit there and wait and complain because resources are being wasted. The taxpayer burden, I know we've been talking about them. How can we alleviate the burden on taxpayers caused by these financial enterprises? Management in these enterprises, issues to do with high staff costs, revenue leakage, mentioned in the report.
So taxpayer burden, I'm afraid the taxpayer will always be burdened because the moment we say let's reduce taxes, that small tax will still be stolen somehow. So what is needed instead are the taxpayers to take action themselves, to say, listen, we're not happy with the status quo. We're not happy with how money is being siphoned out. We're not happy with what's happening in our country. Just the same as citizens. Because if we say tax burden, I'm afraid there's no immediate solution to that. All we can hope, or all we can do as members of Parliament is to say, okay, fine, let's reduce taxes that people are paying. But then the government will say, if we reduce taxes, then we are going to kill service delivery. Then we are going to kill
I'm sure,
government
Honorable,
operations.
there's too much money that is coming through taxes. That's why there's a lot of mismanagement. If we had very little, I think people would not
People
mismanage
will
it like
steal
this.
that little money. Unfortunately, those who have the art of stealing would still steal that little money. The problem is not, I don't think our taxes are so bad as a country. I don't think we pay that much tax in even the corporate tax. I think the problem lies in which all these parastatals and accounting officers are not being brought to account. If we start bringing people to account, I can assure you, if we say in every ministry where you had the PEMSEC and you got an adverse opinion or a disclaimer, your job is gone. Things will change. There will be more management of public resources. But if the status quo remains and we don't bring those people to account, then I'm afraid this will remain.
Heads should roll for this to change.
Absolutely.
I think that's what needs to change from now on.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I'd like to thank you very much for
Okay.
joining us. There you have it, viewers. That was Honorable Caston Matewu. He's the Marondera Central MP, and he was talking to us about the Auditor General report. And he says some of these issues are reoccurring. There needs to be tighter internal controls, and so that we can deal with the mismanagement issues. He also highlighted that as Parliament, they are doing the best that they can. They don't have arresting powers, but they are investigating and will further the report to the relevant ministries. In the past, some people have lost their jobs. Boards have been changed as a result of the work that they're doing. So until next time, my name is Lynette Manzini. Goodbye.